You're tuned in to the Thinking Out Loud radio show, giving voice to issues that matter to you.
We are reacting to the news that we've heard. It's all over the television, social media. It's everywhere, and of course, we are ecstatic. We believe that Derek Chauvin was definitely guilty, as charged, guilty on all three counts. But see, the difference is, in what we think versus what actually happens. And that's typically what is the case in these police brutality type of situations. What we think typically does not play out in the court systems, in the court of law. But in this particular case, guilty on all three counts. This was really interesting when you think about this case. This man George Floyd, who not just Minneapolis, Minnesota has embraced, not just this country has embraced, but dare I say even the world has embraced, because the world was watching this verdict. It was all over the news, CNN covering it, and I guarantee you there are going to be stories from news outlets across the globe, because when you think about what happened last year around this time, the protests that were taking place, it was a watershed moment for this country. It really was. There were protests that were taking place in Berlin, Germany. This man's name, George Floyd, was evoked in Paris, France, and again, Berlin, Germany. It was tremendous. In fact, we were able to take some of that footage and that audio, and we used it for a Black Lives Matter commercial that we did for our own podcast. You hear those voices, and it's very powerful when you think about this man who none of these individuals met personally, but yet when they say Black Lives Matter, they were saying that his life mattered. And that is really what is at the heart of all of this. And so we're seeing ourselves in their shoes and saying that their lives matter. And I think what's even greater than that, because when you see other races joining in this movement for Black Lives Matter, I think it's one thing to hear black people say Black Lives Matter, and that is an expectation that we have. But I think it's another thing entirely when you're hearing white people, brown people, Asian people, yellow people, Mexicans. You're hearing people from other ethnicities, other races, evoking the same decree that Black Lives Matter. And not saying that white lives matter any less, or Asian lives, or Mexican lives, or any other ethnicity or race lives matter any less. We are just saying that we want to be treated equally, that our lives matter just as much as anyone else's. But I say all that to say that I am, like many of you, pleased to hear that Derek Chauvin was guilty on all 3 counts, deservedly so. I believe he deserves the maximum amount of prison time. I said that on my podcast, the Thinking Out Loud radio show, that he deserves the maximum amount of time. Second degree unintentional murder, I think carries with it a 12 to 40 year maximum sentence, and he deserves that. And I'm sure that you agree with that as well. But yes, he deserves that. He showed no remorse in taking that man's life. We've all seen the video footage of him kneeling on his neck, and you even saw the only emotion you saw from Derek Chauvin was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Guilty on all 3 counts. And that's when you were able to, that's when you saw his righteous indignation. Like, what? Guilty? And yeah, I think Sincere Roberson said showed no remorse, right, and looked like he enjoyed it, right? The pictures. Shelly, yeah, Shells, what's up? Most definitely. The pictures where he is kneeling on George Floyd's neck with his right hand in his pocket, as if to say, this is like he's posing. This almost reminds me of a plantation picture. One of the slave masters in the South posing with the body of one of their black slaves. And that's what that picture reminded me of. And he almost looked like he grimaced in the photograph, like he was posing for the picture. Like, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? And the individuals standing on the side that were taking the pictures or videoing it, Darnella Frazier is a young lady that I really wish I could reach out to and have on the Thinking Out Loud radio show. I'm going to really try my best to reach out to her, because I know it was difficult for her on the stand. I saw some of the video on YouTube, but this young lady is a hero, because it was, as someone put it, when she pressed record on her cell phone, her cell phone became the eyes of America on this dreadful act that unfolded right in front of us. We saw a man's life taken right in front of us. And so it's really, really disturbing. And we said on our podcast yesterday, another reason that we are all affected by this and impacted by this is because what happens to one directly affects us all indirectly. Dr. King said that we are all in an inescapable garment of destiny. And what affects one directly affects us all indirectly. And my humanity cries out for another man's humanity. And so that's why I cannot offend my brother without hurting myself, or without someone else feeling that pain themselves. So that's how we have to look at this. And that's why that is what's so awesome about this response. But unfortunately, we cannot turn back the hands of time and bring him back. This is all we have at this point. But I think this is a step in the right direction. But the question is, where do we go from here? There is the Justice for George Floyd Fair Policing Act that is in Congress right now, and nobody's doing anything about that. I think something needs to be done. I think it's time for it's time for a real criminal justice reform in this country. It's been time. It's past that time. There needs to be uniform training. Shelley says, yeah, you're saying what we're thinking. Exactly. You're saying what we're thinking. And it's time. It's time. There needs to be uniform police training across the board. Police officers need to be trained uniformly in every city the same way. There's no question that there's no reason rather why police officers in Michigan are trained one way and police officers in Minnesota are trained a different way. There should be a universal way that police officers are trained, and again, that's not going to completely eliminate the problem, but it's going to raise the level of accountability for those officers that are and have been trained by their respective police departments. There's no excuse. It's time for universal criminal justice reform. Now, we talk about this in one of our podcasts. We were talking about Black Lives Matter and the five black the exonerated five, that director Ava DuVernay and her documentary of those exonerated five young black boys that were falsely accused of raping that white woman. She says in the interview, when asked about the criminal justice system, the question that was posed to her was, does this system need to be reformed? She actually said the system is doing what it has been designed to do, to incarcerate young black boys and black men. That's one side. That's one aspect of it. Now, the other side of it, it's also taking those same lives as a result of police brutality and police violence in the streets. So something needs to be done in that respect, and from that perspective as well. So it's interesting. This is something that needs to be addressed. I know there are individuals individuals on both sides of the aisle when we talk about police reform. But I hope those that are joining us know and understand that this criminal justice system is against us. Someone says, I don't think he will have long. What does it say? He will live long once he goes to prison. That's interesting. You don't think he will live long? Yeah, because this man, Derek Chauvin, is probably one of the most hated men in America. This case is probably one of the most high profile cases in a long time that's come before the criminal justice system. And for this officer to have been found guilty and convicted, I'm sure there are men that he's put behind bars that have right, that remember who he is and can't wait for Derek Chauvin to go to prison. So yeah, you're right. I agree with that 100%. But this is interesting. I want to know from you, aside from just this George Floyd Policing Act being passed in Congress, what do you think are some other ways that we can move forward? Move forward with criminal justice reform. What are some things you want to see happen or have happen? Because this is just one thing I think that needs to happen, but there are several other things that definitely need to happen as well. Because again, we all are seeing ourselves in George Floyd's position, and that's what makes this response to the verdict. That's what makes the protest, the Black Lives Matter movement, and everything surrounding this so marvelous, because it's not about George Floyd per se. We are seeing ourselves in that position. We're seeing our sons and our daughters, our nieces and our nephews, our cousins. We're seeing our relatives, our friends in that position. And we are saying something should be done. Somebody should have done something. That Derek Chauvin should have shown him the least bit of consideration, because he was a human being just like him, just like himself. And that was what is so striking to me. Jerry Blackwell, the prosecuting attorney, said in his closing arguments in the rebuttal a couple days ago, well, actually yesterday. I mean, they just took deliberations started yesterday, and the verdict came through today. So Jerry Blackwell said yesterday, and this really hit me. This was his last comments, last remarks as he gave his closing arguments yesterday. He said that the defense throughout the trial has said that as one of the reasons that George Floyd died was because his heart was too big. But Jerry Blackwell said the truth of the matter is George Floyd did not die because his heart was too big. He died because Derek Chauvin's heart was too small. Woo! Think about that. Think about that. He died because Derek Chauvin's heart was too small. And that's how he left it. And I'm sure that last statement resonated with those jurors, because if Derek Chauvin showed this man the slightest bit of humanity, then we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Can you say that again for me? Yeah. He says that George Floyd did not die because his heart was too big, that George Floyd died. The fact of the matter is George Floyd died because Derek Chauvin's heart was too small. I think this was a good start, but we're not finished. There's more work to be done. There's more that can be done and more that should be done. And I'm hoping that this will not be a moment, but a movement. Remember that this, I'm hoping and praying that this isn't a moment. This isn't a moment in the history books of our country, but this is a movement towards something much bigger, something much greater, because we have that ability to make that kind of impact. And I think that is what should be done in the spirit and the legacy of George Floyd.